Let's dive right in and enjoy.
As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense forest, Woong trudged back to the hidden den where he and his band of men resided. The path was familiar, winding through thick trees and overgrown brush, yet tonight it felt heavier, burdened by defeat. Earlier in the day, Woong had led his men out with confidence, but their plans had been thwarted by the powerful fox Yokai, Eunho. The den itself was a crude but well-concealed hideaway, tucked deep within the woods, far from prying eyes. It had served them well, a place of refuge for those who lived outside the law. Guards stood at the entrance, usually vigilant but now curious as they saw their comrades return in less than triumphant fashion. The sight of Woong and his men, weary and empty-handed, was a stark contrast to their earlier bravado. Woong's frustration was palpable, his body bandaged from the battle, a clear sign of the confrontation he wished to forget. His irritation was only compounded by the curious glances and murmurs from his men as they noted his injuries, particularly the damaged ear, a memento from his clash with Eunho. But no words were exchanged about the details of his defeat. The weight of the day's events silenced any unnecessary remarks. From a distance, Eunho observed. Perched silently in the shadows of the trees, his gaze remained fixed on the den. The bandits had lived here quietly for some time, avoiding attention, content with their hidden existence. Yet today's encounter had changed that, drawing the Fox King's watchful eye. The peace they had once enjoyed, unnoticed in their remote lair, was no longer guaranteed. The dense, secluded mountains rarely saw travelers, much less someone moving with such deliberate intent. The guards stationed at the entrance of the Aso clan's stronghold were accustomed to silence and isolation, their watch often uneventful. So, when they spotted a lone figure approaching, it immediately set them on edge. The man, shrouded in an aura of calm confidence, moved with purpose, not like one lost in the wilderness. As the figure drew closer, the guards stepped forward to intercept him. Their postures stiffened, eyes narrowing with suspicion. This stranger did not carry the typical wariness of someone who had wandered too far. His presence was bold, deliberate. Sensing something unusual, they blocked his path, demanding answers. Eunho, however, met their scrutiny with an air of ease, as if their imposing presence meant little to him. His calm demeanor only seemed to heighten the guards' unease, especially when he inquired about their master as though the leader of the Aso clan were of no great consequence. His tone, far too casual for their liking, sparked a flare of anger. Offended by his audacity, the guards' hands flew to their swords, their eyes hardening into grim determination. To them, this was a grave insult, one that could not be ignored. The blades were drawn with a sharp hiss, and they leveled their weapons at Eunho, their minds set on making an example of him for his perceived disrespect. But Eunho remained unshaken. A smirk played at the corner of his lips, amused by their threat. Before the guards could even react, he moved. His speed was beyond their comprehension. One moment they stood poised to strike, and the next, they were disarmed, their bodies crumpling to the ground in defeat. The confrontation ended before it had even begun, as Eunho effortlessly neutralized both guards, leaving them sprawled in the dirt. Within the dimly lit chamber, Li Jiaguang, the leader of the bandits, lounged in relative comfort. The flicker of the bonfire cast faint shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of quiet seclusion. However, the distant sounds of commotion reached his ears, disrupting the stillness. With a furrowed brow, he wondered what might be causing such a disturbance. His men were often rowdy, but there was a peculiar energy in the air tonight. An attendant quickly entered, bowing low, apologizing for the intrusion. The man seemed flustered, his hurried explanation only adding to Jiaguang's growing curiosity. A stranger had apparently forced his way into their stronghold, boldly demanding an audience with the bandit leader. The mention of Chanhajang, a place that he was familiar with, piqued Jiaguang's interest. The name lingered in his mind, stirring a mix of intrigue and caution. Who would dare approach him from such a place? In the yard of the bandit stronghold, Eunho stood motionless, his expression serene, despite the tension surrounding him. Dozens of Li Jiaguang's subordinates had formed a tight circle, their weapons drawn, ready to strike at any moment. The air was thick with anticipation, yet Eunho's calm demeanor remained unshaken, as if the threat posed by the bandits meant little to him. From the entrance of his chamber, Li Zheguang strode into view, his eyes narrowing as they fell upon the intruder. His voice carried authority as he addressed the situation, trying to make sense of the boldness of the stranger who had invaded his domain. There was no immediate trust in his words, no inclination to believe the claims of this unexpected visitor. To Zheguang, many hid behind the guise of righteousness, their true motives far more deceitful. But Eunho's calm response caught his attention. Eunho spoke of an earlier encounter, providing a description that left no room for doubt. A man resembling a toad, wielding an axe. The mention of Wung, one of Zheguang's own men, struck a chord. Eunho detailed how he had pierced Wung's ear and embedded a coin into his axe, a mark that could be verified easily. Intrigued and wary, Li Zheguang wasted no time. His voice rang out with authority, commanding his men to summon Wung at once, eager to confirm the truth of the stranger's words. Li Zheguang held Wung's axe in his hands, studying the weapon closely. His sharp eyes scanned the surface, noticing the absence of a coin, yet the dented mark remained, a clear sign of where it had been struck. He murmured to himself, noting the damage that matched the size of a coin. His suspicions confirmed despite the missing evidence. Turning his gaze towards Wung, he demanded an explanation. Wung, visibly shaken and hesitant, muttered a feeble excuse, his words falling flat. The pitiful response was enough to ignite Li Zheguang's fury. Without a moment's hesitation, he swung the axe with brutal force, striking Wung with his own weapon. The blow sent the subordinate flying, the sheer power of the strike showing no mercy for the man who had disgraced him. The yard fell silent as Wung's crumpled form hit the ground, leaving no doubt about the consequences of failure under Li Zheguang's rule. With the matter of punishment settled, Li Zheguang shifted his focus back to the Eunho standing calmly before him. His tone now carried a hint of forced respect, as he confirmed Eunho's identity. A leader known for his unwavering principles of trust and respect, Zheguang was swift to offer his own form of restitution. He declared that those involved in the incident would be punished, their wrists severed as an apology for the wrong done. But Eunho's response was met with a smirk, his expression cool and dismissive. Severed wrists meant nothing to him, and such a grotesque gesture held no value. The bandit leader, taken aback by the unexpected refusal, questioned what Eunho truly wanted in return. With a grim smile, Eunho laid out his terms. The issue had stemmed from money, and so it would be resolved in the same way. The Aso clan, he declared, would cease their demands for toll fees from Chanhajang and, furthermore, return all the money they had extorted up until now. His words hung in the air, cutting through the tension as the bandits stirred in disbelief. Outrage rippled through Li Zheguang's men. One shouted in protest, anger boiling over at the audacity of Eunho's demands. Another added his voice, reminding him that it was their protection against other bandits that ensured the safety of travelers like him. The challenge to the Aso clan's authority was met with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Even Li Zheguang could not contain his reaction, his booming laughter echoing through the yard. To him, the demand was not only absurd but an insult to his clan and their allies. Toll fees, after all, were a long-standing tradition, deeply rooted in the ways of the martial world and the wilderness. Zheguang, however, offered a compromise, a reduction of 3 months' worth of fees as a gesture of apology. Satisfied with his offer, he turned his back on Eunho, his tone dismissive as he ordered the fox Yokai to descend the mountain before darkness fully set in. Eunho's eyes gleamed with cold amusement as he responded, his tone laced with mockery. The arrogance of Li Zheguang's offer seemed almost laughable to him. He saw right through the bandit leader's bravado and, with sharp words, made it clear how little regard he had for the Aso clan's so-called traditions. He compared Zheguang's defiance to that of a mere thief daring to stand against a far greater force. If the martial arts alliance were to make the same demands, Eunho mused, there would be no talk of customs or long-standing practices, only swift compliance. The insult struck a nerve. Li Zheguang's composure faltered, and his fiery temper flared. The mention of the martial arts alliance, an organization with influence and power far beyond his own, was enough to provoke a sharp retort. His mind raced, wondering if Chanhajang had ties to the alliance, or worse, if they had involved them in this matter. For the first time, doubt crept into his voice as he questioned Eunho's connection to the formidable group. But Eunho, unfazed, scoffed at the notion. His disdain for Jaguang's inflated sense of importance was evident. The idea of involving the martial arts alliance for something as trivial as a small group of mountain bandits was laughable. To him, eliminating such a minor nuisance didn't warrant the attention of such an organization. The clear message was that the Aso clan was beneath consideration, a mere annoyance to be swept aside, not a challenge worthy of greater forces. The tension between the two deepened, the sharp exchange of words revealing the vast difference in their standings. While Jaguang clung to his pride, Eunho made it clear that, in the grand scheme of things, the bandits were nothing more than a small obstacle in his path.